Hi there, my name's Paul Wagner, and I'd like to invite you to take a little journey with me through the really bad way that the wine industry presents itself to the rest of the world. I call it 15 Mistakes Wineries Make. And I call it that because for the past 35 years, I've been a consultant to everything from quite small wineries to some of the largest companies in the world, Diageo, Constellation, etc. And in every case, I've given them the same advice, and in every case, they've never taken it, which is wonderful because, first of all, it gives me a continuous source of income because they keep calling me back and asking me, what should we do? But also, it does keep the need in place, and we need to do a better job in the wine industry. So that's what this presentation's about. I'm going to talk you through a few things. First of all, myself, I have written a few books. Wine Marketing and Sales won the Gourmand International Award as the best wine book for professionals when it was released. And then Wine Sales and Distribution won the same award in North America when it was released. And coming soon, we have a book called Artisan Public Relations that I hope will have the same sort of success. So what do we do wrong? Well, the first thing we do wrong is we don't have a key message, and we don't communicate it either. So I meet with clients and I ask them, so what is it that makes your winery different? And they always give me the same answer. And because it's the same answer, it can't possibly be what makes them different. So what, as Elizabeth Slater always says, I'm a small family winery. I handcraft my wines. I carefully select my vineyards, and I've won a few awards. That's true of every winery on the planet. What makes you different? Why should people care about you? In the wine business, we do a terrible job of explaining this. And in the end, we end up getting endlessly wound up in tiny little details, none of which the consumers care about, nor do they remember. And so in the end, we don't do a very good job at all of communicating our brand message, our unique selling proposition, our point of differentiation, all of those things that they teach you in your first marketing lecture. Marketing 101, and it's as if nobody in the wine industry has ever listened to that first lecture. Luckily, I did. It's why I had a career for 35 years here. The next thing we do is we make it hard for people to visit the winery. Now, admittedly, it's coronavirus time, and it's going to be hard to do public activities at this time. But even beforehand, we have done a terrible job of making our websites friendly to consumers. Remember that most consumers, when they visit a winery, don't plan weeks in advance. They're often driving up and down the road and pull out their phone to see what's available or to see what they can learn about your winery. And what they find out is they get an opportunity to join your wine club. They don't want to join your wine club. They want to visit your winery. Or if they're in a wine shop, in a restaurant, I hear from sommeliers who complain, people don't want to talk to me. They want to use their phone. But when they pull out their phone, what do they read about your winery? Does it really give them a sense of who you are and what you're like? No, it's generally endless technical details about when the grapes were picked and how they were harvested. That doesn't tell people what they want to know. So we make it endlessly difficult to visit. We're a small family winery, and when you call the phone number, thank you for calling our winery. If you're interested in visiting the winery, press 1. If you're interested in talking to our accounts payable, press 2. I'm sorry, that's not the way small family businesses work. That's the way large corporations work. Small families say, as one of my friends who owns a small family winery says on his answering machine, "Hi, I'm Sheldon. And I can't come to the phone right now because I'm either out in the vineyard or working in the barrel room. But I promise I come in at lunch and at the end of the day, and I always check messages and I'll call you back. So leave a message and I'll get back to you." That's the way a small family does it. Get rid of the phone tree. All of these complicated technological devices that make it impersonal do not communicate the message of your brand. We don't do a very good job of creating first impressions. particularly in Europe and Latin America, but even in the States. When you drive up to a winery, does it say welcome? Does it encourage you to come into the winery, or is there a gate and a code and you have to push the button to get the code? That's not welcome. That doesn't say we want to see you. That says, oh my gosh, we're terrified, we hide behind our wall, but if you're really special and secret, maybe we'll let you in, but you have to polish your shoes first. Just not the message we want to give to consumers. And again, what is the brand message of your winery? Does your parking lot communicate that message? Most wineries look at their parking lot, well, that's where we park the cars. Once we get inside, but they don't understand, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression. The first impression people see, the sign, the parking lot, or your website. And how do we greet people? Do we welcome them with open arms? One of the things that I think we do quite well in the Napa Valley is we greet people sometimes as they get out of their cars, certainly as they walk in the room. My rule is 5 seconds. 5 seconds after they walk in the door, somebody at the winery should say, hello, how are you? I see you. I recognize you. I wave to you. I know you're here. You are important to me. And I can't tell you the number of wineries I've visited where you open the door and it's a long walk down a corridor, or it's across a big open space, and at the far end there's a receptionist who's often on a podium a little raised above you so you can feel even less important than you already are. If you recognize the scene here, it's from that famous movie, The Wizard of Oz, where Dorothy and her little friends are forced to walk down a large hallway. It clearly looks like they're in a cathedral. And remember the number of wineries who, over the past 25 years, have been built as a cathedral to wine, and that means their customers are what? Pilgrims? Penitents? That's not the way companies should treat their customers. They should treat their customers as part of the family. And so we intimidate them, we make them feel unwelcome, we don't greet them when they walk in the door, and then we complain that people don't really care about our products. Well, would you care about products that were presented that way? We do a terrible job of signage, and I absolutely love the one in the middle. Sorry, we're open. But look at the one on the left. Do not enter. Entrance only. I'm sorry, I speak English, and I don't understand what that means. When people arrive, do they understand exactly where they're supposed to go when they visit the winery? Probably not. When they walk in the door, is it clear? What is the most common question asked at every restaurant in the world? Where are the restrooms? Now, this is an important question, because if someone asks you, where are the restrooms, they're also telling you, I've never been in your restaurant before. So you have a double opportunity. You can tell them where the restroom is, but you can also recognize, new customer, potential long-term customer, how can I exceed their expectations and make their visit remarkable? But most restaurants and most wineries, all the way in the back on the right, in the back on the left, and that's the end of the conversation. We do a terrible job of talking to our customers in a friendly and helpful way. And these signs, they don't tell customers what they want to know, and at times we use signs to prevent ourselves from having to speak to people. And what do people really want when they visit a winery? Well, the first thing they want is some kind of personal reaction, personal relationship, human connection. Signs get in the way of human connections, and we need to do a better job of that. We hire very wine knowledgeable staff. Just an absolute disaster. We hire people who have training in enology. We hire people who have training in viticulture or sommeliers. The problem is none of those careers spend any time at all training and educating the students on how to talk to people. And the problem is we tend to think of our job as educating. Now, I ask you, does the film industry hire people to educate people about the film industry? No. Does the music industry hire people hire music critics to welcome visitors to the store. When you go to Spotify, do they give you lectures on harmonic suspension and syncopation? No, they just ask you, what do you like? Cool, let me find something that's going to be just like that for you. We do a terrible job because we hire people who know too much. They know too much technical information and they don't know enough human information. I teach wine sales, and one of the key elements of sales is that the first job of every salesperson is to listen. And we hire people who like to talk because they like to show off how much they know. Terrible, terrible idea. And then we teach. Dear God, we get somebody at the winery and we have to teach them viticulture. We have to teach them enology. We have to teach them. Wine is the most romantic beverage on the planet. And if you think that wine, the essence of wine has to do with cold fermentations, cold soaks, and native yeast, you are a very strange person. That is not romance. We need to get rid of this idea that we need to educate our consumers, and we need to share the joy of wine. Look at this woman in the photo. She is not communicating joy. I've seen this happen in tasting rooms. I've seen this happen in sales presentations. I've seen this happen everywhere in the wine industry. We pick someone whose wine knowledge is unassailable, and then we have them go up and try to charm a group of people. And you know what? Wine knowledge is not charming. Charm is charming. And we do a miserable job of this because we always hire people that we think are really, really knowledgeable. We need to teach our consumers instead of encouraging them to enjoy wine. Yeah, and when you visit the winery, the first thing they tell you, yes, I'd like to, what's your Wi-Fi code? Oh, I'm sorry, that's only for employees. There's only one reason that you have Wi-Fi at the winery. No, it's not so that you can send invoices to your customers. It's so that your guests can take Instagram photos and post them on their Instagram page and tell everybody else how wonderful you are. If you want social media attention, the first thing you should do is give them free Wi-Fi so that they can go on there and tell everybody what a wonderful time they're having at your winery. And yet, we don't do it. Why don't we do it? Because we're idiots. And even worse, we always give the same damn tour. Doesn't matter whether it's the president of a distributorship or whether it's a nice couple who have never visited a winery before. When you go on the tour, you get the tour. I'm going to tell you a personal story here to emphasize how important this is. Years and years ago, I was young, so you can get an idea of how long ago that really was. I was asked to give a tour. I got a call from my boss who said one of the most influential people in the world of wine is bringing a group of businessmen to visit the winery, and you personally will give that tour. Now, I was impressed. I was surprised. I was terrified. But I thought, okay, I'm going to give it my best shot. So I meet the guy, and of course, he knows more about wine than I do. So I'm thinking, what the heck am I going to tell him about wine? Well, we walk into the first room. We generally greeted people in the barrel room because the barrel room was spectacular and beautiful. And I said, now, what do we use barrels for? Well, when you put wine in barrels, two things happen. And I look at this guy and I realize this guy knows more about this stuff than I do. And I turned to him and I said, perhaps you would like to explain what happens when we put wine in a barrel. Well, he stepped right up. He was very excited. Yes, he said, you get microoxidation from the gentle flow of air through the walls of the barrel, and you also get some flavors and texture from the wood itself. The wine actually extracts flavors and aromatics and phenolics from the barrels. Great, this guy knows his stuff. We're great. Next room. Fermentation tanks. Now, we ferment at different temperatures for different kinds of wines. And I look at the guy, and same thing. Why don't you explain? Well, every place we went on the tour, I just turned to the guy and said, would you like to explain why we do this? And he went on. So I didn't insult him. He seemed happy. the businessmen were very impressed that their boss, their host knew so much. At the end of the tour, thank you very much, goodbye. He drives off. I get a call from my boss. How did it go? And I said, well, I think it went okay. I think everybody's happy. I don't know, but I think it went okay. 3 days later, I got a call from the president of the winery. I just received a phone call, or a letter. This was back in the days when it was handwritten letters. I just received a written letter from the wine expert you hosted a few days ago, and my heart was thumping. I thought, oh God. The president said, he said it was the best tour he'd ever been given at a winery. Well, of course it was. He gave it himself. But the point being, you have to be willing to change to do things depending on who's there. And the only way you can find out who's there is to stop talking and start listening. Ask them questions, draw them out, and let the audience determine what kind of presentation you're giving. The way to think about this is, if a tour is theater, and I'm fully behind the concept that a winery tour is theater, as is a sales presentation, then it cannot be a recitation. It has to be improvisational theater, and that means the audience has to be involved. And in order to get them involved, you need to be quiet and ask questions and get them talking. And that's the way you make sure that your tour is not the same damn tour for everybody, but is tailored perfectly to the people who are listening to it right now. We don't like questions. One of the things I hate about the wine industry is we start off by saying, first we talk for 45 minutes and then we say, any questions? Because I'd love questions. If you want questions, start asking for questions right away. So you'll notice in my presentation here, I'm actually not asking for questions because I want you to listen to the whole lecture. But when it's time for questions, we're going to go around the room and I'm going to ask everyone to make a comment, to make a question. I want you involved, because getting you involved not only makes it a better learning experience for you, it makes it a better teaching experience for me. And that's what's missing in the world of wine. We get one question, the answer is 45 minutes long and goes into pH, ionization of hydrogen, and all the rest, and then we don't get any more questions. What a colossal waste. By the way, I hope no one here reads Korean. It's a very strange sign I've got in the background. And then we provide tasting notes. Now, this is fascinating because there is definitive research that shows that the more detailed the tasting notes you give your customers, the less likely they are to buy wine. There's no question about the results of this research. It's been proven over and over and over again, and yet every winery insists upon giving a long list of descriptors for every one of its wines. Please don't tell me people want this, because the research clearly shows they don't buy wine when they get long tasting notes. So, why don't they buy the wine? I may ask you to think about this a little more in our discussion, but the real reason they don't want to buy wine is when you go on, they're not sure the wine is for them. So Cornell University, for example, they took on alternate days in winery tasting rooms both on the East Coast and the West Coast, they printed up price sheets. On one price sheet, it simply said Cabernet Sauvignon, big red wine, $38. And on the other price sheet, it said Cabernet Sauvignon, from native to the region of Bordeaux. This grape has hints of cassis and delicate nuances of vanilla, finely ground tannins, blah, 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 blah. The first sheet sold way more than the second sheet, by 40%. 40% more sales when you didn't describe the wine to the customer. And yet, what does the winery do? Describes the wine to the customer. They just don't listen. When we set up our site, when we set up our store, we act as if sales is somehow embarrassing. Look at this beautiful, beautiful wine tasting room here and wine shop. Can you see where the cash register is? You don't even know where to go to buy the wine in this place. Instead, I want a salesperson standing right by the front door, welcoming people as they come in. And oh, by the way, before you walk out, you're going to have to walk by that same very friendly person and look them straight in the eye as they say, "Thank you for coming to visit our winery." And you've got to look them straight in the eye and say, "Yeah, we're not buying anything today." No, 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 no. You're going to buy something because you've already made that human connection, and you'll sell a lot more wine if you simply let people know that buying wine is why they're there. You need to be obvious about it. This one drives me crazy. Again, there are companies in the world of wine. One of them is based in the Napa Valley, and they have a very simple business model. They take the customer base of the winery. They take the contact information from that customer base. They simply call the customers and they say, "Hi, we're from Paul Wagner Winery, and we're just calling you to say thanks for visiting a few weeks ago, and we just want to make sure you got home with the wines, and is there anything we can do to help?" And they sell about 40% of those calls sell wine. In fact, the companies don't charge the wineries. Their business model is, we will sell enough wine off these phone calls. All we want is a commission. And they make enough to create a whole company out of this. Why don't wineries call their customers? You have to understand that as a winery, people love wineries. They think that wineries are really cool. Now, when I shop at a high-end store like Nordstrom, within a week of getting home, I get a handwritten postcard from Jacqueline, my salesperson at Nordstrom, saying, "Thank you so much for shopping with us. If you ever come back, please ask for me. I'm happy to help you. And by the way, Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, we're having a special reception for our best customers, and I'd love you to come down and meet some of the other customers, have a glass of wine, and do a little shopping." Now, if Nordstrom, which has set the standard for customer service throughout the world, does this, why don't wineries? Because they're lazy, because they're badly trained, and because they don't have a good sense of strategy. So why would customers ever return? We have done everything wrong. We're not friendly to them when they arrive. We make them sit through lectures on enology and viticulture. We lecture them with pretentious sommeliers who feel it's important to teach you how to taste a glass of wine. You know what? Francis Ford Coppola doesn't give you a lecture. He doesn't make you sit through a lecture before you watch The Godfather. He just says, "Fasten your seatbelts, we're going for a ride." We should do the same thing with wine. We should communicate more of the joy. We should make it more fun. We should make it more interactive. And we should stop treating our customers as if they're stupid, as if they're illiterate, as if they don't have any taste or culture, and our job is to train them so that we can let them out in polite society. Complete disaster from the point of view of the winery, and a complete disaster for the industry as a whole. Now, would you like to know more about her? Does anybody know who she is? I know who she is. She actually owns a winery, by the way. But here's the problem. Here is how we in the wine industry would describe this woman. Yep. That's all you need to know. The problem is that we don't tell people what they want to know. We tell people how we make the wine. We don't tell them why we make the wine. By the way, that young woman is Natalie Coughlin. She won innumerable Olympic swimming medals, at one point more medals in swimming than any other woman in history, although she has since been surpassed. She lives right here in the San Francisco Bay Area. She has a small vineyard up in the Napa-Sonoma area. And in her free time, she likes to teach underprivileged children how to swim because she believes that no child should be afraid of the water. Now, that's what you want to know. You want to know what makes her laugh. You want to know what movies does she like. You want to know what kind of person she is. You don't want to know whether she's 61% oxygen or not. In fact, I have actually had an Italian winemaker argue with me that the 0.9% trace elements are what makes each individual human different. Dear God, I hope they never let him out in public again. So when you talk about wine, please leave the numbers out of it. When you talk about wine, don't explain how. Explain why. Tell us what you love about winemaking. Tell us the joy that opening a bottle of wine brings you. I guarantee it, you will sell much more wine than what you're doing right now. Wine is not about facts. People don't remember facts. People remember stories. Tell us stories. Help us fall in love with wine. That is your job. And I now look forward in our class session to having some wonderful conversations about how crazy I am to suggest this. Here's my contact information. You can reach me at Napa Valley College at napavalley.edu. And I do have a website, and the website includes some of this stuff as well.